The Border Gummersgull Trophy has been a roller coaster to say the least, and just when we thought that we had seen it all, an incredible day of cricket here at the Sydney Cricket Ground, day two of this fifth test. Sam Jordan from 9 News, joined by Dan Breddick from The Age. Dan, Australia currently trails by 145 runs. India still has 4 wickets in hand. This game, this series is so delicately poised. Where do you currently see this test match being at?
Well, I would say that Australia would be just the happier of the two teams by a very fine margin tonight. I think had Rishabh Pant been able to bat for another half an hour or so, Australia would have been in deep trouble. But at the moment, they'd be thinking that they're a pretty strong chance to win, given also that there's a whole lot of uncertainty around the fitness of Bumrah and whether he's going to be able to come back for one more line-hearted spell.
15 wickets falling today, 3 in the final session with Scott Boland's name next to them. It did seem like the day the final session was going to belong to him, then Pant walked out to the crease. That is the kind of cricket that we haven't seen from him this summer so far.
Well, he's been threatening to do it here and there, but yeah, he hadn't really put his stamp on the series, and that innings really, well, we'll know of its importance and its value at the end of the game, won't we? If India win narrowly, then that will be the reason that they got enough runs, and really, he was the only one to be able to find an approach that was able to work even for a short time against Scott Boland. Boland came on when India had made a pretty good start in their second innings. Jaiswal in particular had gotten going. But he just seams the ball so far on these pitches with this Kookaburra ball. He's very, very hard to get on top of. And he's almost impossible to play in I suppose, a proper or correct manner with a straight bat, because he just keeps moving it around. Pant didn't do any of that. He smashed him down the ground for 6 first ball, and swung the ball quite often to the leg side in that innings. Yeah, it was really a bit of a 1-2 struggle between Boland and Rishabh Pant today.
Yeah, that's right. Pant hitting a 6 off his first ball, a 6 to bring up his 50. It did have that threatening feeling, like we saw from Ben Stokes in the Ashes last year, that the game just started seeming like it was getting away from Australia. Then Captain Pat Cummins did what he does so often and took that crucial wicket.
Yeah, he did. And I think the fact that Boland had been able to give him a measure of control at one end, had been working his way through the Indian order. I would certainly say that both Pat Cummins and Mitchell Starc are getting at the tireder end at this point in the series. Cummins has now bowled more overs than anyone else in the series, including Bumrah. So he was certainly someone who needed a little bit of a break, but to come on for a spell just after the final drinks break, get a little bit more bounce to get an edge from Rishabh, that was obviously vital for Australia. And then Boland followed up by getting ready, and Australia should have had a wicket just before stumps to Bo Webster, but Steve Smith jumped across in front of Usman Khawaja and got to parry the ball away.
Yeah, that's right. We will wait and see just how much of an impact that does have in the rest of the game tomorrow. Bo Webster did take his first test wicket today as well, which is a really nice moment. He's looked really good with the ball.
He's looked really good with the ball, and he was obviously very good with the bat as well today when Australia were struggling. He's a player who, through a lot of great performances for Tasmania over the last 3 or 4 years, he's someone who's actually really familiar with these scenarios. A grassy wicket, the Kookaburra ball doing a lot, needing to be a proactive player in the middle order, and he actually used the word himself, counterpunch, when we spoke to him down in Melbourne. And yeah, he looked at home today, and he certainly looked a lot more confident with the bat than Mitchell Marsh had looked. So that call, that selector's call, looked to be a good one for Australia, and yeah, he was really pivotal in keeping the Australians in the game.
Yeah, exactly right. Look, let's talk about Australia's innings now. Bo Webster, as you mentioned, was a standout, a half-century on debut, just like we saw from Sam Constas, a big tick for the selectors. And Webster, from the moment that he walked out today, he looked really comfortable.
Yeah, he did. And, that was in contrast to what we saw first up with Marnus Labuschagne not lasting very long. Sam Constas and his battle with the Indians didn't last particularly long either. Travis Head came and went in the blink of an eye. And Steve Smith played well, got to the fringe of 10,000 test runs just before lunch, and then left everyone disappointed by nicking off to a fairly straightforward delivery. So that sequence kind of summed up the morning for Australia, and as you say, it really needed Bo Webster with a little bit of help from Alex Carey and the tail to get them close to India's first innings.
We were sitting there at the ready, weren't we, with Steve Smith? The camera angles were cutting to Danny, his wife, in the stand. She was nervously counting down like everyone else, 5 runs short of 10,000. you could see how much that frustrated him when he walked off, not only because he would like to have ticked that milestone off, because he knew how important that partnership that he was building with Bo Webster was.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's got to be said about Steve Smith that he's looked better the further the series has gone on. I don't think there's any doubt now that he's still got quite a few test runs left in him beyond 10,000. And yeah, absolutely, there was frustration from him not to get to the milestone, but I think everyone knew from, well, even before he came out to bat, that he was always going to get 2 bites at it in this test match. And so those 5 runs and whatever he can make beyond will be very important come the end of the game.
Jasprit Bumrah arrived at the ground today with that same energy that he left it yesterday afternoon. He was a man on a mission. He did take Marnus Labuschagne early on, and then it was the story of the day. He left the ground under mystery. The next time that we saw him, he was walking out of the members' pavilion. He got into a van underneath the stadium, and then he did leave the ground with an ambulance with its lights and sirens on, driving him away for scans. Now, the Indian team is saying that he has suffered back spasms today. He does have a history of back issues in the past as well. How big is his current fitness in terms of deciding this series?
Yeah, well, in terms of his back, he actually had the same surgery in 2023 that Cameron Green recently had for Australia, where they use a little bit of wire basically to sort of stabilise the spine and back stress fractures basically that he's had a history of, because you know that extraordinary bowling action of Jasprit Bumrah puts an enormous amount of strain on pretty much everything with him when he's in his delivery stride. So yeah, whether there's a way able to be found for him to be able to come back on and bowl for one final crack at the Australians remains to be seen. But yes, if he's having some back problems, given that he only had surgery in 2023, that's a big question mark for India, and a question mark that kind of, although this series is important and the Test Championship is obviously very important for India, you know, they've got to think about other campaigns ahead, the Champions Trophy, and then of course you'd imagine his owners in the IPL would be watching this particularly closely as well. So yeah, we will wait and see.
Yeah, that's right. Jasprit Bumrah with 32 wickets to his name. I never checked these stats before we start talking about them. 38, of course, is the number that it did look like for a while he was charging towards, which is the most that any visiting bowler has taken in a series in Australia. Maurice Tate with 38. So look, whether or not Bumrah will be able to bowl is the big story for tomorrow. We mentioned it before at the very top. How do you think Australia will be feeling knowing that they're about to walk onto a pitch, well, firstly to bowl again tomorrow morning, but then to bat to try and finish this game off? That did take 15 wickets today. The whole series, the 6 weeks, the highs, the lows, the roller coaster that we've been on, it's going right down to the wire.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about how it's a very big contrast in approach between what India did in India in 2023 when they were 2-1 up in the series, and the final test of the series in Ahmedabad was played on a very flat surface. This has been anything but at the SCG. A new kind of grass, which has been spoken about a lot, that's obviously promoted a lot of movement. I think there's a little bit of division in opinion over whether that's been, you know, better or worse for the SCG. Certainly the proponents of it are saying, well, this is a really action-packed test match, and that's great. But of course, in Melbourne, they were able to get the balance right between bat and ball and get the game all the way to the 5th day. And yeah, I can't see, even with a little bit of rain around potentially, I can't see this game getting to day 5.
No, absolutely not. It's worth actually mentioning the crowd as well. 47,000 again in here today after yesterday's, well, touch under 48,000, which was a record, the biggest crowd that we've seen here in 49 years. It's a shame that this test won't go the distance because all of the records were likely to tumble. Yeah,
well, that's absolutely right. It's been quite incredible to see how packed the SCG has been. You know, the fact that they've outstripped any crowds for any AFL game ever here is really something, and tells you to one degree both how fully, you know, subscribed the public tickets were, but also every last SCG member has been cramming in even if they can't get a seat. So, you know, the level of interest in this series has been enormous, and you know, it's just that time of year, December, January, Christmas and New Year, where cricket really becomes the water cooler conversation topic, and yeah, this series is delivering talking points aplenty.
Well, I stood here 24 hours ago and said that we didn't know where this series was going to go next. Today has certainly delivered on that. So what we do know is this 5th test of the Border Gavaskar Trophy, and that piece of silverware is going right down to the wire. We'll bring you the latest again tomorrow.